I point that out because, again, it's one of those things we don't even think about anymore. It's just so natural that we do it. But you do always need to have permission when you're recording somebody. Otherwise, now, for the sake of this class, it really doesn't matter as much. But when we're meeting with parents, when we're, anything like that, we always want to make sure that we are covering all of our bases. So let's get into some educational psychology. I'm going to start by sharing my screen with you. Um, um, I'm going to do a little bit of a review of some of the stuff on human learning. This was in the PowerPoint on the announcements that I gave y'all um, from the Ormrod text. Okay. And let's see, can you guys see my screen here? It says Human Learning Ormrod 8th edition. Good, good. Okay. So let me go ahead and go to slideshow. Okay. So the first thing we have is the I'm just to be clear here because I'm now in presentation mode. Do you guys see something that says chapter one, or do you guys see the slide still that says human learning? Slide that says human learning?
We see both.
You see both. Neat. Okay, well then there's no point in me doing a slideshow. Okay, so let's go back to the original business over here, which is, yes, continue to share. Hold on. I don't need y'all over there. Okay, continue to share. Okay, so here we go. We are looking at this. Perspectives on learning. Now, the importance of learning is we have made the most progress of any species documented. Of course, there aren't dolphins writing papers, so we're not exactly certain, but we can guess that yes, we have made the most progress in learning. We have the ability to acquire a large amount of knowledge and variety of behaviors, giving a bigger degree to the flexibility and adaptability than other species. A lot of species, when you think about it, they only learn things that they're going to use immediately to survive. We do other things than that. Um, we do greatly underestimate other species' intelligence, obviously, and we see that especially in the animal kingdom, and our environment has a big impact on the knowledge and skills that we acquire. Now, we're going to come back to that a couple of times throughout this course because environment has a huge impact on what we learn. When we start talking about testing and stuff like that, environment has a big impact. Okay, so we're thinking about long-term change and not quick today. So when we're talking about learning, we want something that's going to be not necessarily repeatable immediately because there's kids who will regurgitate information. That's not learning. We talk about rote learning. It's a kind of learning, but that's not giving the deeper learning that we're looking for. Okay, we want to be able to have mental representations or associations, a change as a result of the experience rather than physiological maturation, fatigue, use of mind-altering substances, mental illness or dementia. So far, am I making sense? I don't want to read this whole thing. I did share it with you. These are some ways that we can determine when learning has occurred. And when you think about it, so my background is I was a music teacher for 30 years. And when a kid is able to do something new, that's one way we can tell that they have learned something. When a group of students does something differently, for example, the way that they walk into the room on day one versus day 10, if you can change the way that they do that to a most desirable way, that can show learning. Uh, Changing the speed of an existing behavior. Basically, the more we can give it to them, the more that they can recall things building on other things. The complexity of an existing behavior. Dem Synthesis is a big one with me. And I'll talk about different things that we can do to demonstrate synthesis. Okay, these are different types of learning research. Again, the biggies, quantitative and qualitative. You'll hear me refer to those a lot over the course of this semester and next semester as well. Quantitative is going to use numbers, qualitative is going to use feelings. That's the short and dirty version. Typically, quantitative is the one that's going to get funded easily because it has something concrete that people can measure. Qualitative, I believe, qualitative is a lot more appropriate for education. Quantitative has its place and actually gets done a lot more often because people are more ready to fund it. Qualitative actually is more meaningful. I saw we had some ESOL teachers in the class. The most authentic assessment that we give in the state of Georgia is the access test that our ESOL students take because it is a true qualitative test. Okay, these are some learning principles and theories. And I like this that we need to feel a sense of control over our environment to prosper. If you don't, you kind of feel lost, right? And you, think about right now, if you have a child in college, what it was like the first day they walked into their dorm room, right? They had no control over their environment and they're terrified. If you don't have a kid in college, that might be how they feel their first day of school. Um, but again, here's some differences between principles and theories. These are how different things evolved, and we're going to get real deep into some of these: behaviorist, social learning, cognitivism, social cognitive theory, and contextual theories. Lots of really cool science happened, and a lot of the research, the earlier research is wild. Like when I start talking about some of the stuff, you're gonna go, they really did that to people? And yeah, some of the stuff really did happen. Here's the advantages of theories. And okay, I'm gonna stop there and we'll get to chapter two in just a second. So, how are we doing? We good? We feeling good? Am I throwing too much at you?
Pretty confident. Feel pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, good, good. All right, let's see. Hold on one second. There we go. I like to be able to see everybody. Hey, look at y'all.
And normally my camera is on. It's just off for today, but normally it is on. Just to let you know.
Okay,
That's why I put that picture up there. But normally it is on.
all good. All good. There will be sometimes, and I've had students before who just say, "Hey, I'm gonna put everything in the chat box. Is that okay?" And for certain days, that will be okay. But having the camera on definitely is a lot more engaging. When we talk about principles of learning, that's a physical response to what's happening, right? So when I give you eye contact or you give me eye contact, it lets me know that you're listening, or it lets me know that you're paying attention, or vice versa, right? Uh, so let's see here. Who can see the messages? Uh, my messages, the if you're doing private messages to each other, that doesn't get recorded. Um, if you're doing messages to the group, I don't know if that gets recorded or not, to be honest with you. But it doesn't really matter either way. Sorry, I was just looking at your message chat there. So, all right, let's get back into this. So, looking at, let me go back to sharing my screen. And here we go. And we're back. Okay. Let's see. Wait, I'm sharing a picture of y'all. I don't need to see y'all. Not that I don't need to, just, you don't need to see y'all either. Okay. So, basic building blocks of the human nervous system. Let me get you guys out of here. Sorry about that. Okay. So we've got our neurons, our synapses, our glial cells, and our myelin sheath. Now, this is really more of the physiology stuff here. And this is one of those chapters that you can go back and look at and look at. So what I want to point out here is some of the things like if you talk about autoimmune diseases, um, let's lupus being an autoimmune disease, Multiple sclerosis being an autoimmune disease. With multiple sclerosis, the myelin sheath doesn't develop. So there's no insulation around the nerves. And what happens there is it basically creates clouds in the brain. And and when those clouds happen, different things can change in the brain that we are not, it's wild and stuff that we don't necessarily know what to do with. A lot of times with autoimmune diseases, though, they kind of get lumped into we don't really know what that is. But I will tell you, uh, that's one of the things that I do know for a fact about MS. Let's
I
go.
have MS.
Oh yeah. Okay. So you're familiar with all that then, huh?
Yeah, that I have the myelin sheath, especially behind my eye.
Hmm.
It's messed up some, and if I get like if I get hot, and it can do like inflammation, and then I can damage more of the myelin sheath or whatever. And they described it as like an electric, like an
Yes.
electric cord, and
Hmm.
parts of it are they don't have that wrapping around the wire,
Right.
if that makes sense.
That's exactly it. When you think about if you've ever changed a light switch, if it doesn't have that wrapping around it, it'll shock you. And the myelin sheath is essentially that insulation wrapping around the wire. Um, so these are some different brain structures and functions, okay, based on development. So prenatal, between the 5th and 20th week, uh, a lot of the neurons in your brain have already formed. The brain has three chambers: forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. Now, what's neat, and again, I'm not going to read all of this to you. You guys have this, but what I do want to point out is synaptic pruning. This is really neat. If you ever wonder, and I'm sure many of you have, why babies cry so much, uh, there is a thing that a filter basically that we develop as we age that allows us to tune things out. Babies don't have that yet. So every sound in your environment right now, if there's a fan on anywhere in your house, if there's a fluorescent light, the buzzing of that light, if there's any little thing that's going on, a ticking of a clock, all of those things are heard by a baby. There is no synaptic pruning. See, what happens is we, as people, we take it all in. And imagine taking everything in, and then your brain goes, okay, I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need that. I can get rid of that. I'm going to save that for later, right? Babies don't have that yet. It starts to develop in their first year. Um, okay, here's some more of the functions of the brain. Uh, and going back to the synaptic pruning, it's interesting because a lot of times when people have arguments as adults, it is, they say, are you listening and are you hearing? Well, there is a difference between listening and hearing. We hear all the stuff. We choose to listen. Um, So a lot of times when we were kids and our mom yelled at us, "Hey, you need to take out the garbage," and you don't say anything, and they say, "Are you listening to me?" And we say, "Yes, I heard you." We were actually telling the truth. We did hear them. We just weren't listening to them, or we didn't want to listen to them. Okay. So here are some neurological bases of learning. So neurogenesis continues through your lifespan and possibly in regions of the frontal and parietal lobes. Um, this stuff really became very, very interesting to me. Well, at an earlier age, but we've had Alzheimer's in my family. Um, my mother, my grandmother, my great grandmother. So this kind of stuff I've taken particularly to heart, and a lot of things that keep us going as far as neurogenesis are, basically always trying new things, keeping the brain active. Um, not sitting still, basically. Here's some implications of brain research for educators. Okay, this one's interesting. There's no such thing as teaching to the left brain or the right brain. Um, so I wrote a grant 25 years ago, maybe. No, it was 20 years ago. I wrote a grant about um, using right brain and left brain learning. And basically, it wasn't necessarily the left side is your reason, your right side is your creativity. I mean, I can understand that, but that's really, really basic and not necessarily true because it's not true in every case. Um, One thing, good sleeping habits and regular exercise definitely increase brain function. All right, and we're going to stop there with that because that goes into chapter 3, which we're going to get to next week. All right, back to business here. So, stopped my share here. Um, how are we doing? Are we good so far? Okay, let me get us back. There we go. Sorry, I'm changing my view back to the gallery. I like being able to see everybody. Um, Good. So what I want to get into next is our connections and our discussion. So first, let's look at the connections. Let me get to that, which is right here. Is that it? Let's see. Okay, that's not it. Sorry, sharing the wrong thing with y'all. Not this one. We go back to share. No. There we go. Okay. There's my connections here. Okay, so we'll go up to, that should say module 1. Okay, so uh, the first thing I'm looking for is our 3 takeaways. We read those 2 articles, and let me get back to where I can see everybody here. There you are. All right. Okay, so we read those 2 articles. First off, did you find it helpful? Did anyone find it helpful to have something to listen to? Yes. Okay. I will try to do that again. Um, and to me, it's not necessarily, it's not a big deal to do it. The quality of the recording's not awesome. I just basically hit record and read out loud. But if it helps you, I'm happy to do it. Um, and another thing that we will get into is how to read educational research, because I will tell you, um, a lot of people that do grad programs don't know how to read it and kind of figure it out over a lot of stress and frustration to do like just enough. I will get with you guys on how to do it the right way, to save you a lot of pain and heartache. All right. Um, but getting back into stuff here. Okay, so I'm looking for 3 takeaways from those articles, and we're going to start with that piece. The way that this is going to work as a class discussion is I'm going to get us to go into some different rooms. I'm going to do some breakout rooms. I'm going to give us about 5 minutes, and during those 5 minutes, one room is going to be 3 takeaways, one room is going to be 2 connections to practical applications, and the other room is going to be questions. Okay. And then what we're going to do is each room is going to have a tribute or champion, depending on how you want to look at it. Tributes usually died, so we'll go with champion. Um, unless you feel good about tribute, if you're that confident in your abilities. But what we'll do is we'll go with one person from each room will then come forward and say, hey, this is what we did, and these were some of our takeaways as a group. And then, of course, other people in the group will then be able to interject if they like to. Okay. What I will be doing when this happens is I'm going to go back and forth between the rooms. I probably won't have my camera on, and when I'm in there, If you have a question for me, ask it. If you don't, I'm just going to listen. I feel like you guys get a lot, you'll get a lot of me talking, and I think this is really a lot more engaging for you when you guys can talk to each other. And a lot of you guys know each other already, which is fantastic. Some of the, oh my goodness gracious, that is an adorable puppy. Sorry, I have ADHD. We'll talk about that disease later. It's not a disease, it's a condition. Uh, anyway, so yeah, so I know that the folks that are new to many of you in here are music folks who I had over the summer. I'm guessing, is everyone else in here an art teacher?
CTAE, marketing entrepreneurship.
Okay, cool, cool. And that's
Nikki.
Nikki. Okay, cool. Who else? Who else do we have? Do we have anybody else who's not art or music?
I'm a second grade teacher.
Awesome.
I teach
So you're
fourth
both.
grade.
Manuel,
Kind of.
you?
I teach fourth grade.
Fourth grade. Awesome.
I'm
I
first
teach
grade.
first.
Okay.
Fourth grade.
Excellent. Well, you will find a lot of times when we're applying stuff, I'll give you the fine arts spin on it, but that doesn't mean that it's, that's just based on my experience and a lot of other people's experience. But if you got something to add, I want you to, because we all learn more based on what all of us can share. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up the rooms. Let me see here. There's my breakout rooms. Okay, I'm going to create 3 breakout rooms. And I'm going to let them assign automatically, but I'll tell you, if you are in room 1, you're going to be doing your 3 things. If you're in room 2, you're going to be doing the 2 things. You know what? That's not good. I'm going to go the other way around. If you're in room 1, you're going to do 1 question. If you're in room 2, you're going to do 2 things. If you're in room 3, you're going to do the 3 things that you got from it. Good? All right. I'm going to open the rooms. Now, what I'm going to do is I'll give us about 5 minutes. If we're really cooking and need more time, I'll give you more time. I'll give you a warning and say, hey, we're going to have about 2 minutes left. And then when I close the rooms, it gives us 1 minute to get back into this space here. Okay. So I'm opening the rooms right now.
Hey, Dr. K. Says he's on here.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Question. On the syllabus,
Yes.
it looks like class 1 is like introduction and review,
Yes.
and then class 2. So is all this stuff supposed to be done?
This is the stuff we're doing this week.
So is everything just moved up a week then?
No, it should have been moved back to this week. So module 1 starts in week 2.
Okay.
I'm taking that we didn't read the articles.
No, I read them, but I was just looking because it says like class 1 introduction and review, and it says review syllabus and requirements, and it says class 2 looks like 827 module 1.
That's when it's due.
Okay.
8/27 is next Tuesday. That's when it's due.
So this stuff is due, but we talk about it the week before.
Right.
Okay, got it.
So-
Just wanted to make sure it was the same as last time.
Yeah. So our folks that aren't in this conversation right now or on these office hours, if they are choosing to do the written version, they need to get it in by Tuesday. By a week from yesterday. That's what that means.
Okay, got it. I just want to make sure it was the same as last time.
Yep. Yep. It is.
Okay, thanks.
You bet. Any other questions for me? All right. Ricardo, you look like you had a question.
Yeah. In terms of like brain health, like how much sleep is enough sleep to like see a difference in just overall cognitive function?
It depends on who you ask and how old you are. Um,
Okay.
if you are if you're in your 40s, you may not need as much sleep. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have it.
Yeah.
But you can still function pretty well on 6 hours.
Oh,
Typically, the general is going to be 8 hours. That's kind of the agreed upon. Some more, some less, depending. Um, I one of my daughters requires 12. Um, and and
sounds like my sister.
I don't know if it's to be asleep and not have to deal with me, or if it's just which is fair.
Yes.
But then again, there's some, my son, he's 19, and he'll sleep 3 or 4. He should have more than that. But
Yeah.
but your body will always let you know. It'll make you catch up if you don't sleep enough.
Okay.
But
Cool.
yeah, that's a good question. All right. I'm going to jump over to another room. You guys keep going. Come up with some of these questions. All right. This is great stuff. All right.
Mm.
All right.
Hey, Dr. K.
Yes.
Seth Bates just texted me and said he's having internet issues. He's trying to restart his router, but then he'll need to get back in.
Yeah. He texted me that too. And
Okay.
hopefully he'll
Okay.
let me know when he's back in, and I'll let him in the room.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Larks. And so the idea is that their brain functions at a later time in the day, like at nighttime, especially like the, middle school, high school age, and that that it's almost like their brain is still asleep. And then throughout the day, it's like they're waking up. Whereas the adult brain, it had us as a lark, where we are awake in the morning and we are able to grasp concepts and ideas faster than a child. And anyway, so that was really interesting. And it said like you can, if you were to teach maybe later in the day and let these people sleep, let the kids get enough sleep, that would be one way that education could change for the better, is to start later in the day.
Because all of my students, they're like, I went to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. I went to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. You know, they're not sleeping like they should be. And then they're exhausted until lunch, and then they're wired for the rest of the day. So,
Nutrition and lifestyle habits also have got to play a large role in that with what they eat, especially the things that we see with red dye and how that affects brains, and it can even mimic ADHD sometimes. And like nutrition and sleep is huge.
Yeah.
You could go into like like I remember growing up in Colorado, and weed was the first thing to be legalized there. And like I was in high school when that was happening, 2010 is when I graduated. And so because of that, like I remember a lot of my peers that were like, oh no, it doesn't affect the brain, but it was like that was all the frontal lobes, and like that was all decision making. And it took them like knowing those kids now that are adults, like they're still struggling. Like, and it's really sad because it's like they didn't have all of that, like all the everything that needed to happen for the frontal lobes to be developed is like a little delayed, which you know what I'm trying to say?
Well,
Like
all that, yes, and all of that, like what I was saying earlier, the communication between the occipital lobe and frontal lobe when we're mapping words and the vocabulary component and all of that. If your brain is not functioning, that can't happen, even down to hydration. If you're dehydrated, your brain is not going to function the way it needs to.
and all the kids, I teach in a very, very, very low income school where all the kids, they take care of baby sister, baby brother. They wake everybody up for school because mom and dad have 3 jobs apiece. And if they're worried about being a parent and being a big brother, a big sister, they're not really focused and able to fully embrace school and what you're trying to teach them. They're not there.
Well, they're in survival mode. There's
Yep.
no reason for them,
They have
What was
more
that?
important things.
Yep.
Who's that did the hierarchy of needs? Who's that?
Maslow.
Yes, Maslow.
Yeah. Got to get those basic needs met first before any
Yep.
learning. Yeah.
Maddie, you had talked about a little bit about ABA. Like I used to do ABA too for like 6 years, and like
Mhm.
I was always so interested in like how like behavioral based practices are way better when they're like used with CBT or with speech-based therapy or like occupational therapy. But like
I took away from. Oh, hi. Um, the influence of dopamine and that like how we're really kind of fighting against these dopamine hits that our kids are getting from technology and social media, and we're having to like try to figure out how to give them that dopamine ourselves, and like make them feel good about what they're doing in our class. So that was something that was very interesting and kind of resonated with me. As I was reading that article, I was like, oh man, it's that there's a lot happening there.
Another thing we have to work against.
And that, right.
Right. And then another thing we also have to look at is, to be honest, I mean, I don't know if you guys had the same issue, but we had the last 2 days we've had internet issues in Gwinnett County. The internet, the internet has gone down, and the amount of like frantic because we couldn't access the internet. When realistically, I think teachers undermine what we can do because, not too long ago, we didn't really have as much access to devices and technology, but it's like the teachers freaked out more than the students. And it's like, we do need to go back and revise how we view what the students can do. They can do things outside of technology. They can learn, we can go back to good old fashioned paper and pencil. But I think we're fearful of the attention span when we don't have technology. So as far as having that dopamine, that good hit, I think the teachers are frantic over that same thing. We need it.
And we're just as bad. We're just as bad, right? Because I mean, I teach via Google Classroom, and I'm in Gwinnett County too. So I have been,
You experienced it.
It's like the dark ages. Like, oh my God, wait, I can't put up a presentation. And I have to like pivot. I mean, I've been teaching for 19 years. I know how to do this. Like, I know how to go back and you pivot. So like right now, my photography class, I wasn't planning on showing them the camera, but yesterday I was like, when it was Monday, it was like happy Monday, no internet, no portal. And it was like, all right, go grab your cameras. We're going to talk about your cameras today. And so it has changed the trajectory and the direction of like my curriculum and where I am, but I've got to run with it. I've got to run with it because that's where we are and that's where the kids are. And they actually had the hands-on earlier than I planned, but now I'm like, okay.
So I think that's just another mindset. Like that again is.
Hey.
Oh, hey.
Oh, there he is.
Yep. We were just talking about you living on Tybee.
Yep, that's me.
Yep. I'm the one that I live on Oatland Island, so
Nice.
I'm close to
Far, yeah.
So do you just want us to have like our one question that we've kind of come up with to discuss?
If you have more than one question, from your group, that would be handy.
Okay.
But I mean, there's a lot of meat in what we read this week.
Yeah, it was kind of information overload.
Yeah. Well, and add to that the first 2 chapters of the book. I mean, that's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah.
I mean, there are entire courses taught on each one of those chapters. So, I mean, I get it. But yeah, I would say if you guys could come up with two or three questions that you think
Okay.
are pertinent to maybe spark either some introspection or some discussion, I think that would be great.
Okay. All
Okay.
right. Perfect.
But Carl, you had a question?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
No.
Gotcha.
All right. So your first question, Carla, would have worked,
Okay.
which was how do we create an environment?
Yeah. To best open the brain's pathways to learning.
Good, good. All right, I'm gonna let you guys get back to it. We've got about 2 minutes, okay?
Okay.
Not enough time, or do you need more?
That's good.
That's good.
Okay, nobody looked frantic, so I'm gonna believe you then.
Okay.
Okay.
Good deal.
All right.
They're trying to expose and have some kind of social experiment, and especially with kids, they don't pass everything, so they put them in art. And but I'm very protective of them, and I try to work with them and blah blah blah. But anyway, all good things. But the fact that we take everybody and we just stick them in one class and expect them to all be learning the same, it's not realistic. Like, that's not, I mean, it is very utopian. It's very a fun idea to think we can all work together, because that's the real world. But if you want to maximize what these children are learning, I would think that you could. I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. Nobody knows the answer to anything in education in America, because it's a crap shot. But I don't know.
Wait,
I
do you
don't know.
feel, I really, so again, because I work in inclusion school, so I'm really trying to understand what you're saying. So are you saying that, like, what would be in your brain or your mind, educational mindset, what would be the ideal um
Learning
situation when you have gifted IPs, 504s, ESOL, like all of them? Like, what would that really look like in your
Right. Well, therein lies the problem, because nobody knows. So we have this thing where we're throwing all the smart kids in one class, or we're throwing everybody in a class, or we're throwing all the low-level kids in a class. Something's not working. Like, I don't know the answer, and nobody else does either, because we're doing terrible in education. And I don't know if it's just a society problem. I don't even want to blame the parents at this point. I mean, our society is crazy. I don't even know what's going on since 2020. I don't know. And I'm waiting on the mothership to just come in 2 weeks and take me on the meteor or whatever. But like, it's a problem, and we don't know how to fix it.
I will say, like, I hear you. And maybe again, like, because, and this is why I'm trying to understand more, is because, like, I have only taught in an inclusion school. Like, I've only taught in that setting. So, like, I know, like, we've taught middle through high school, and like as an art teacher, yes, I have a class right now. I have drawing one. I have 10 IEPs, 7 504s, and 3 gifted children all in one class. Like, trying to teach drawing one. That is insane. And I had to have a conversation with my boss and be like, every other classroom has a co-teacher. This is insane. Like, you can't, like, because most of them are low. Like, I had 5 out of those. I have a lot of IEPs, and not all of them are low level.
Well, and then you have
that were like, so I learned, poor, bless the child's heart. His IEP literally said, cannot work on paper.
Well, then, yeah, and then, well, then,
like, and it's because he has visual spatial problems. He can't, like, he's so socially, like, you would not think that he has any problems, but then when you sit there with a ruler and be like, okay, we're going to connect the dots with the ruler to do 1 point perspective, and bless him, he couldn't do it. Like, I mean, it was like, I tried every possible accommodation I could think of. I made tools for him. I like made squares for him. I did all these crazy things to try to get this kid to do it, and he wanted to learn so bad. And it was like, but he couldn't see it. Like, he actually, like, unfortunately, like, I have no idea. In that situation, I had no idea what to do, because I'm like, I can't see what you see, and I know you can't see
because they
Looks like
now
that
know
movie.
how to process those emotions that they just did not understand. So,
It's like the
yeah.
animated movie. What was that movie with all the different emotions in the brain? What was the animation that?
Inside Out.
The Inside
Yes.
Out. That's what I was gonna say
Yes,
too.
it's
Yes.
just like that. I mean,
Mhm.
literally. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, but that's where I think the advantage of understanding that and being able to talk
Mhm.
them through it, because even if it's not developed, just giving them the knowledge that, hey, it's going to take some time. You just got to breathe. These are some things. I think that like
Yeah.
that's kind of putting tools in their hands, right? I mean,
Yeah.
even as adults, like we a lot of things that we don't know how to deal with, but we need tools too to kind of regulate what's going on and
Breathe.
understanding what's going on
Yeah.
with us. So I can
Mhm.
only, with kids where we know that they just can't, like they're not there yet.
Yeah.
A lot of
I
times they
think
don't have
understanding.
parents at home to help.
Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, right.
Brittany, you're exactly
Sadly.
right. They don't know how to process theirs. So you're exactly right. So sometimes they lean to the teachers because that is the only way that they can get it. And sometimes validating that, you're not crazy. These are real emotions.
Right.
Like it's okay to have this emotion. How are we going to deal with it is the other side of it. So like, what does it look like, or what does it feel like in your head to get over this hump, and that we can
Mhm.
work together? So yeah.
Well, I know even in this course, like just talking with you guys and like, when we chat or something, just knowing that what you're feeling is not just you. I can only imagine how that would feel with a kid, because here I am, grown adult, trying to understand my feelings and emotions and, like Will Ferrell, that glass case of emotions. But
How you guys doing? Good. Okay, so this is my room 1. Is that correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Here comes room 2. Nope. That coming. Yeah, some room 2. Good, good. Room 3 will be here in a minute. They were actively engaged right then. So while we're getting everybody back in here, one of the first things um, in my intro, I had mentioned one of the things about human behavior. 80% of all discussions with people involves complaining. Did you know that?
yeah,
And it's funny because this in education, this is something that we all share a passion about, right? And it is very easy to complain about something that you're passionate about because it is not meeting the expectation of what you have in your mind or in your heart or whatever. That's good and it's healthy, right? The better piece to do from there is, well, what can we do to fix it? I mean, clearly it's broken. Okay. Well, if there's an accident on the side of the road and nobody goes to help that person, they're just going to sit on the side of the road, right? You got to have somebody who's going to come and help them. And clearly the person on the side of the road is helpless. So it's going to be those kind people, you, who go in with the solution. And maybe the solution works and maybe it doesn't, but until somebody comes with a solution, all you have is a problem, right? Um, I heard some really, really interesting stuff. I want to talk about a couple of those things before I hand it back over to y'all so you can share the pieces that you guys got, okay? Um, I heard people talking about environment and um, the fact that a lot of the reinforcement, if they feel like it's not happening at home, and the behaviors that we're seeing, some of it's just happening in the classroom because, well, we don't feel supported. That's okay. That's okay. We want support, obviously. Um, I had an experience yesterday. with a second year teacher, band director, and he's doing his band lesson and he's talking about how just these kids, and guess who's in front of him? Those kids. And they keep talking and they keep doing this, and y'all got to stop talking, and you got it right. Well, you got to stop talking, Mr. Teacher, and let them play their instruments. It's band class. And I thought I made some progress with him. I said, "Hey, do you mind if I do something?" And I stood up on the podium, and his whole class got silent. And I raised my hands, and his whole class picked their horns up. I didn't say a word. And then he interjects, "Well, why is it that you're doing it for him and not for me?" Oh, Jesus, right? Um, so I wrote him a little note and said, "Hey, give me a call. Let's get together and talk. This is not the place to have that conversation." And a lot of times when you talk about solutions, right, you have to be understanding of whether or not the people that you are subject to, if they are prepared to take a solution. You know, sometimes people just want to complain. They don't need it to be better, because if it's better, we got nothing to talk about. Um, it reminds me of an episode of South Park that just came out in the new season, which is terrible, by the way, at least in my opinion. But I did watch the first episode of this season, and Cartman realizes that nobody cares anymore, and so he can't make fun of anybody because it doesn't matter. And it took away his power. And it got me thinking, that was his whole thing. And when nobody wanted to listen to him complain, he had nothing to talk about anymore. So interesting perspective. And it does apply over to education in that, there's every year there's some kind of new initiative, or there's something. This is, we used to do this, but now we're doing this. Well, listen, we started in our country, we started a free and public education as mandated by our Constitution, right? Every child is entitled to a free and public education. We said that's great. We started to really enforce it. And then things changed and changed and changed to where it became really about the 1950s, where we started to say, okay, every kid's coming to school every day. We made a schedule that kind of followed the farmer's almanac, because we needed certain things. We needed people that could help do agricultural deeds and stuff like that during specific times of years. The calendar followed that. Another reason that our school year in Georgia, the reason that we have gone to starting so much earlier and ending so much earlier in the year, is heating and air costs. And transportation. Gasoline prices are different when it is hot outside versus when it's cold outside. It's wild, but that's one of the trends. Anyway, getting back in education, in the 50s, we said, okay, everyone's going to go to school. We're going to make them. We're going to make sure that they're doing it. We're going to do roundups. We're going to make sure all these kids are getting that free and public education. And then you go through, we went through all of the stuff. We'll talk about Ruby Bridges and all of the stuff of just learning how to grow into more civilized human beings, as far as how we were going to treat our schools. But during this time, kids left to go home for lunch and came back. Okay. In the 70s, they started to have lunch at school. Right. And it was offered before, but that became more of a standard. Kids had lunch at school. Right. In the late 70s, PE became part of the school day all across our nation. Right. Now, that didn't mean it wasn't there in a lot of schools before, but it became a legal part of the day, where there was a set number of minutes that were required to have physical activity. That was the first time it started to come into effect. Okay. Then we add, our fine arts and all the other stuff that I love. Career tech really started picking up in the 90s. Um, but going back in, so we have in the 60s, 70s, we're bringing in lunch. Okay. Then we make PE mandatory. Then we start having certain blocks of time that are, as we get into the 90s and further, certain blocks of time to say, okay, this is going to be math. We have to have X number of time for math. We have to have X number of time for English. Hey, guess what? Now we're going to give them breakfast, by the way. Breakfast, yeah, we're going to put that in there too. You know what we didn't do? We didn't add a single minute to the school day, a single day to the school year. But what we did do was we added all of this mandatory stuff. We started feeding people twice a day, which I think is fantastic. But we didn't add any time to the day to do that. We just did it. So basically, we're trying to do more and more and more with less. And then we're saying, well, how come it is that we're not as good as everybody else? Well, it could be time, it could be efficiency, or somewhere in between. Now, the question is, how do you get more efficient? Well, if you were to add 1 hour to every school day, you could have a 4-day week. You do that, Courtney? Uh, it's wild. In the South, I don't believe that a 4-day week is going to ever become a universal thing because of football. Listen, man, I'm going to be watching every Georgia game, just like most of y'all. Um, and if it's not a Georgia game, nobody's perfect. But we're going to be following our SEC teams because that's what we do in the South, right? We're not following the Falcons. Maybe you are, but I know I'm not. Um, so anyway, that's a bit of my soapbox. Let's get on to y'all. Okay, so let's start with our three. Okay, so let me get on. Let me get to this here. Module one connections. Yep. Okay, share. Okay, so let's look at our three takeaways. Okay, so I want to know what stood out, any direct quotes, nuggets, takeaways, impressions, any of that stuff.
Okay, I am the tribute of that group.
Oh, good, Lynn. Let's see how that went.
We started off talking about how something that we took away was the fact that psychiatrists or like the science field very much did not feel like educators were worthy of knowing or understanding neuroscience. And that kind of stood out as like, we are with these kids all day long. We have relationships with these children. We know what's going on in their brains. We know what's going on with them emotionally. We know and we try to figure out what works best for each of our kids. I mean, we're differentiating, this kid A is not learning the same thing as kid B. So it was just interesting to me to hear that, and especially from that dude, Jeff Brower or something like that. That was very arrogant and was like the most vocal critic, saying that, teachers can't do that, or they should just stick to pedagogy, leave the research and the scientific stuff to us. So that was really interesting. And then we went to talking about how our brains can grow neurons, and how we could really just like transform what we're thinking, our minds, and what we're learning about if we have enough repetition. Like, it's not just about thinking positive. I mean, if you really do think positive long enough, and you'll eventually start to believe it, and it eventually becomes your reality. So it was very interesting to that. And one of the things that we got from that was like, or a question that I asked was about the moment when those kids come back and they say, you really made a difference. We talked about how like that's that one moment, like where you transform them from thinking they couldn't to they could. And that was pretty powerful. And then we started talking about the importance of sleep and exercise and how as teachers, sometimes we're not following our best advice because sleep, like today, like, we're very exhausted, and also exercise we're not really thinking about because we're so tired. I mean, some of us may have the time to do it and the discipline to do it, but it becomes very, very difficult, even though we know that that is a huge factor in helping our brains. Um, I mean, I talked about how I took a 20-minute nap before the Zoom because I had just had so much going on, and especially at the beginning of the school year where we're all processing so many different things. And our kids too are just processing so many different things, stuff that's going on at home, getting to know a new schedule, new teachers, new friends. I mean, all of that stuff, which is directly related to how they're learning in the classroom. Um, we did talk about a lot more things than 3 things. Can I keep going?
Go for it.
Okay. Because then we kind of got into like the whole idea of the dopamine hits that we're up against in terms of technology and social media, and how can we provide these dopamine hits in our own classrooms when we're up against these like TikTok videos that are just giving them this like hit of dopamine very like quickly. And so, and then we talked about how I and another one of our people in our room, we work in Gwinnett County, and on Monday we came to school and there was no internet. We couldn't get on our portal all day long. We couldn't do it. So we had to pivot. But the amount of panic that was displayed in both our children and us as teachers, like, oh God, what am I going to do? I can't present on the board, and I have been teaching for 19 years. So I know how to do the no technology. We know how to do the no technology, but in that instant, we're like, oh God, what do we do? It's like this sense of panic. So how do we, I mean, I had to pivot, and all teachers in Gwinnett County had to pivot this whole week until they get that figured out. But kids also ended up having to pivot and be like, okay, well, I guess I can't do this. We got to do this, So it was very interesting and fascinating to kind of see how that part kind of happens. We talked about the regeneration of cells and neurons and how fascinating that is and how powerful that is. Just like feeding them and just making them, it's like that moment of transformation in the brain, and that moment of learning, and that moment of like realization that's very powerful to see in kids as they're learning it. And just we talked basically about just the importance as educators as for understanding neuroscience. So that, because that's an actual physical thing that's happening. We're very good, and we can like, see what we're doing in terms of teaching and building relationships and everything, but having the ability to explain to them what's happening in their brain, why they're feeling a certain way, why they're upset about something, being able to explain how that works to children, young and older, because we had elementary perspectives as well in our room, is like giving them tools, right, to kind of figure out, okay, they're not ready up here, and that's not happening. But if they understand that, and we can give them the tools to understand that, then that transition in that development becomes a lot smoother.
Very nice.
That was like 50 things, but that's what we took away.
That's great. Let's look at our classroom connections. Who was our group 2 champion or tribute?
We didn't choose one. We forgot to do this.
Oh no.
I'll share, I guess, unless somebody else wants to. Does somebody else want to? I don't want to like. Okay. Okay, so we talked about a lot of different things. It was cool because we had such a variety in the classroom. We had kind of like I think it was a first grade teacher, a second grade teacher, a fourth grade teacher, and then like a couple art teachers. And then I didn't catch the other couple. But it was just interesting to kind of like, we just kind of talked about like kind of what Lynn started with talking about in terms of like how psychologists often like say this is the way to do this form of psychology, and like all the other ones aren't necessarily as beneficial. In the same way with educators, where it's like there's so much data that could be taken from educators, qualitative data, but like coming from a psych background, like they always would say like that's not the right research, like it's too many variables, like it's not clean enough, you know. And so like they would always say it needs to be quantitative, it needs to be statistically all this stuff, like there was like so much that we did in statistics and stuff like that. So it's this is a very interesting kind of class and conversation that we were having. Somebody also, I think it was, I'm sorry, I'm like trying to find the names. Somebody talked about how they have an ABA background and like they got their master's in that, and so like how like if we know the science, and some of the elementary school teachers said this as well, is like when we know the science behind it, like we're able to kind of make those connections with the kids and like say, okay, no, like this is how you're going to learn phonics, which is like they can't do anything past that. Like, you know, like they have to learn that before third grade. They don't really get as much one-on-one with that after that, is what they were kind of saying. Sorry, I feel like I'm missing so many things because we talked about just having, like for the arts, we talked a lot about how oftentimes we get all of the kids in at one time, and like whether they have an IEP or 504 or are gifted, and like try to figure out how to manage that. Gosh, am I missing anything, guys? Please, I don't.
I'm trying to remember a little bit. I know we also talked about sleeping and
Yep.
like start times, and how when students come into school and they're still groggy and waking up, like I can't remember who it was. But they were comparing like an adult brain to a lark, and how larks wake up early and are very alert in the morning, but then students are like owls and they focus more in the afternoon after they've woken up. But we're expecting them to be like us, but we have to get that out of our brain because kids are not going to be the same as adults. I'm trying to remember anything else, but I feel like those were like kind of our hot topics.
Nice. Well, let's go to our course content connection. And actually, we got that. Let's go to our question. Let's get our one question. That was our group one, our room one, folks. What
Right.
questions did you come up with?
Right. So the questions that we discussed and kind of talked about were how can we as teachers find balance between exciting brain-based strategies and avoid oversimplifying or misusing neuroscience findings? We talked about how things are constantly changing and what we might think might be the best practice for the moment might actually be outdated, and trying to constantly be up to date essentially with like the latest and greatest findings. We also talked about and had a question of how can we create an environment to best open up brain pathways to learning. And then we had one that asked about like how much sleep do you actually need for proper brain function.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So,
All right. Well, there was a really neat study done where biometrics and human biorhythm, the way that it works, basically our body is tuned to uh, basically 12 hours of waking, 12 hours of sleeping. It varies obviously based on the person and the amount of time that you are asleep. Maybe, at many of our ages, 8 hours is a good average. Some of us do more, some do less. But even still, the biorhythm of saying 12 hours of sleep, 12 hours of waking time and 12 hours of sleeping time. So even if you're not asleep, it may just be chill, right? Now, what's interesting is in this study, they put these guys in a cave where they could not see the sunrise or anything else. It was artificially lit, and their biorhythms went to 24 hours from 12. Isn't that cool? When they had zero concept of time, their bodies just changed. Gotcha, Courtney.
Sorry.
All good. That's it. Um, but it's cool to see how the physiology changes. Now, let me tell you a couple other things here real quick. For one, did you know that an American march is at 120 beats per minute? All the John Philip Sousa marches, they're at 120 beats per minute. The reason for that is we have 2 feet, and a healthy heart rate of a soldier in the 1940s and 1950s was 60 beats per minute. So with 2 feet at 60 beats per minute, 120 beats per minute. American marches are 120 beats per minute. Very cool, right? You go to the other side of the pond there over in England, a British march is at 110 beats per minute. Do you know why that is? Well, at the same time, the average healthy British heart was 55 beats per minute. When we talk about environment, it's pretty cool that literally just where you live in the world can affect how fast your heart beats, whether it is slow, if it is healthy, right? The average is actually lower in one part of the world than another. Now, there's other factors that could play into that, but just the actual physiology of that study is really cool. Another thing, the human brain, and I'm guessing all of your brains in here are human. If not, we have to have a conversation because I'm very curious. But the human brain processes information in groups of 2 and 3. Think about when you tell somebody your phone number, how do you do it? You break it up into either groups of 3 or 2, right? When you tell somebody your address, the same, all of those things, that's how we process information, is in groups of 2 or 3. Now, what's cool about that is uh, different cultures around the world, they're like for us, our standard in music would be 4/4 time. We call it common time, right? 4 beats in a measure, right? Just straight ahead. In West Africa, 7 beats in a measure is the common. And it's not necessarily 2 plus 2 plus 3. 7 beats in a measure could be 3 plus 2 plus 2, 2 plus 3 plus 2, or 2 plus 2 plus 3. Wild, huh? Not 3 plus 3 plus 1, though. I know some of y'all are thinking that. No, it's not that. But it's wild because it's processed 2 plus 2 plus 3. Okay, there's parts in India where they go in 11. There's parts in South Africa where they go in 5. It's insane. There's parts in Europe where we think in groups of 3. You think about the waltz. The waltz is in 3, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, right? So it's pretty cool, the physiology behind the way that we observe and bring in the whole world changes based on our environment. When I was saying earlier that environment is huge, it really is. And then there's other elements that we'll get into further on through the course. But yes, environment is huge. And another thing when we were talking about, Lynn was mentioning something about technology and how reliant we've become. And she said TikTok. How long is a TikTok video? I don't have TikTok. I'm really
About 10 to 30 seconds or so, something like that.
right. So the attention span of these folks who will sit for hours and watch this is 10 to 30 seconds, right? Now, we can blame it on one thing or not. It's a visual stimulus. They are responding to a visual stimulus. Now, a screen has a refresh rate. A book does not. When you are looking at a screen, the reason that people talk about screens being a problem, and I don't really believe that they're a problem if they're used correctly, the way that we're using them, they're a problem. But You are trying to compete with something that has a refresh rate of 60 hertz. You don't have 60 hertz. You're just you, right? So in order for us to remain interesting, we have to keep them moving. We have to keep them on their toes. We have to keep them engaged. Now, the thing is, with TikTok and with any of the social media apps or any of the other things that they're playing with online, even the little itty bitties are playing with ABC Ya or these little games that mom hands on the cell phone when they are still in the stroller. Why? To shut them up. Okay, then they come to our class, and what happens? There's 28 others just like them that had a mom that handed them a cell phone. But now they don't have a cell phone. They have an us. And we have to be interesting. Now, have you thought of that before? I'm guessing a lot of you probably have, right? This isn't new information. But what I've just done is I've explained what the problem is. Now, what's the solution? Well, we can be more interesting. How can we be more interesting? Well, you are masters of your subject. There are things that you do that typical people can't do. And you probably don't even think about it because it is the thing that makes you so uniquely you. But your kids don't know that. That's where we can dig in a little bit deeper on how we're teaching, is be more deliberate. When we're talking to our students, if you're in an art class and you're doing a demo of drawing something, talk them through it. I know that's hard. So some of, especially our elementary people, have probably gotten really good at doing that. But a lot of artists don't do that. We make assumptions of this is, they should already know that, so I'm not going to talk about that. But maybe they don't. Or maybe that was the 10 to 30 seconds that they were looking at TikTok and not you. Anyway, and the same is true, by the way, first grade, second grade, fourth grade teachers. There's it's all, I mean, this is a digital world that we live in. These kids don't go outside. When I started teaching, the technology that was in my classroom, and I know I sound old, was a light switch. That was my technology, and it worked most of the time.
Sometimes I think that we forget that we were just in, like we literally went through that ourselves when we were students. Like teach the students the way we would have wanted someone to teach us to get a better understanding. And we actually have access to more resources now. So I totally agree with you on that one. We're trying to pull out what we have in our head to give to them, but we need to do it in a way that's going to capture that 30-second attention span.
I do want to share one last thing with us, and then I'm going to wrap stuff up. We were talking about IEPs and our gifted students and this and that and the other, right? Think about this, all right? That stuff is really, really important when we're in a classroom because we're all learning and we have a set pace of what we think we need to learn and how we need to learn and why we need to learn and all that. How many people here, and you don't have to raise your hand, this is a thought project here, okay? When you're at church, aren't those the same people that have IEPs when they're in school, some of them? And aren't they there for the same reason that everybody else that's there is there for the same reason? And they do have a greater appreciation and understanding, and each person celebrates or studies or appreciates whatever the reason is that brought them in the door. They celebrate it personally. It is a personal thing, right? And we don't need to label anything. That's just, we're there because we believe. Those kids that are in your classroom believe that learning can take place and that you are the one who can help them with it. Just like we sit in church and wait for that sermon, it's usually not anything groundbreaking. It's usually inspiring, but a lot of times you're like, well, man, why didn't I think of that? Or that was great how he talked about that thing that I already knew, or that, the way he interpreted that verse that I've read a million times, right? But again, we're there because we want to create and nurture our personal relationship, our personal understanding. That's why kids are in school. And that's our job, is to be that vehicle to help them get there. Okay. So with all that being said, and I can go further, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna call it a day. This is what I would like for each of you to do. Okay. You guys did a wonderful job in your breakout rooms and your explanations and all that. So when we get off of this call today, I would like for each of you to go in to the connections one and connections, whatever the connection boards are, and I want you to say completed in class 820. And do the same thing. If there's a discussion board, I don't remember if there is this week or not, go ahead and say you were part of that too. Okay. I think this was very good and engaging. The quizzes that we have, those are for points and they do count. They're not for a lot of points and they don't count for a lot, but what they do is they help reinforce. And I've gone in and hold on, I'm gonna stop recording real quick, okay? Hold up, let's see. There, stop share first. Where's my recording going? There it is. Okay, sorry about that.